Slideshow is a short documentary on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. In the beginning of the story, the reader is introduced to a Scottish explorer named Robert Walton. Robert had gone on many ocean voyages in his life, but on one particular occasion he found a man on a deserted ice block known as Victor Frankenstein. Victor Frankenstein was born in the small town of Geneva, Switzerland, and he lives with his two parents, Alpha Rose and Caroline Frankenstein. Victor is a very intelligent young man. Victor has read many books, and they are a symbol of the knowledge that he possesses. One of the first key plot points in the story is when the Frankenstein family travel to Milan, Italy, on an important business excursion. During their visit to Milan, the Frankenstein family meet a young group of boys and girls that live on their own. One of the little girls caught the eye of Miss Frankenstein. Her name was Elizabeth Lavenza, the daughter of two former merchants of Milan that had passed away. Caroline had always wanted a daughter, and she saw the perfect opportunity to take this young girl in. Elizabeth was also supposed to be the bride of Victor when they were both grown up. In the following years, Victor had really wanted to pursue a job in the sciences. So it was decided that Victor was to go to the university in the city of Ingolstadt, Germany. Upon arrival, Victor had met up with a friend of his from Geneva. His name was Henry Clerval. Henry is Victor's best friend throughout the story and accompanied Victor on many of his adventures. Victor had really stayed on top of his studies when he suddenly got a message stating that his mother had unfortunately passed away. After suffering from the loss of his mother, his emotions falsely led him to suppose that he could have some control over the fate of people's lives if only he had the popular formula. This led to Victor's creation, in which he created a human-like being with artificial body parts and a recycled brain. Not giving his creation a name, Victor refers to this thing as the monster through the rest of the story. When he looks at the monstrosity that he created, the sight terrifies him. After a long night with next to no sleep, Victor is awakened by the sight of the monster lurking over him. Frantic, he runs into the streets of Ingolstadt. Victor runs into Henry, who is studying at the university. Seeing Victor's physical and mental state, Henry takes Victor back to his apartment to watch over him. However, feeling frantic and worried, Victor falls ill. Feeling worried by his horrific deed, Victor decides to return to Geneva to see his family. Whilst preparing to depart from Ingolstadt, Victor receives a letter from his father. This informs him that his youngest brother William has been killed. Heartbroken, Victor rushes home. Whilst passing through the woods where William was strangled to death, a flash of lightning illuminates the sight of the monster. Lightning is a symbol of fear in Frankenstein. Whenever Victor becomes scared or nervous, a quick flash of lightning symbolizes his fear. Victor now becomes convinced that the monster is the culprit that murdered his brother. Arriving in Geneva, Victor learns that Justine Moritz, a compassionate and tender young lady who had been cared for by the Frankenstein household, has been accused for the murder. She is taken to court for a trial. However, she is condemned and executed, even though she was innocent. Victor becomes depressed, knowing that it was his creation that led to the deaths of two people extremely close to him. Victor's melancholic mood is very similar to that of Romeo's in Romeo and Juliet, when Rosaline will not accept his love. In hopes to clear his mind from all the negative thoughts, Victor takes a trip into the mountains. Whilst taking a break on his adventure after crossing a humongous glacier, the monster tracks him down and confronts him. The monster pleads guilty to killing William. However, he also begs for understanding. The monster tells Victor that the murder of William was to inflict revenge upon his cruel creator. The monster makes the illusion that he is the Adam of his kind and he wishes for an Eve. The monster begs Victor to create a mate for him. Victor refuses instantly at first, thinking of all the past horrors that occurred with the first creation. These statements from the monster bring up the theme of the noble savage in the story. While the monster is looked at as an uncultured savage, in truth he is striving to find the one he loves. The actions of the monster somewhat resemble that of Alan from The Chaser. Alan will go to unbearable ends to be with the one that he loves. The monster eventually convinces Victor, after making a deal, that he will not harm humanity anymore if he gets what he wants. After returning to Geneva, Victor and Henry set out to England to locate a spot where Victor can create the female monster. After leaving Henry in Scotland, Victor secludes himself on a remote island where he works reluctantly at repeating the first creation. Once again, Victor is having doubts about the morality of his actions. Victor peers out of a very tiny window when a flash of lightning illuminates the monster glaring at him with a frightening grin. Paranoid by the possible consequences of his work, Victor destroys the monster's mate. In return, the monster vows revenge, swearing that he will harm Victor on the night of his wedding. Later that evening, Victor takes a small boat out onto the lake and dumps the remains of the second creature into the water. While finishing up his act, the winds grow very strong on Victor and prevent his return to the island. The next morning, he finds himself washed up on shore in an unknown town. Upon getting his things, Victor is immediately arrested by the local police and told he will stand trial for a murder discovered the night before. Victor quickly denies the accusation, but when shown the body, he is shocked and grief-stricken to behold his friend Henry Clerval dead, with the mark of the monster's fingers on his neck. Once again, Victor falls ill. He is kept in prison until he is healthy enough to stand trial. Victor is found innocent and returns to his family in Geneva. Shortly after returning to Geneva, Victor finally marries Elizabeth. After the marriage, he recalls the monster's warning and suspects that he will be murdered on the night of his wedding. With precaution, he sends Elizabeth away in recluse to wait for him. While he awaits the monster's arrival, he hears Elizabeth screaming and realizes that the monster had not been trying to kill him, but his bride instead. Victor returns home to his father, who dies of grief and sorrow a short period of time later. Victor vows that he will find and kill the monster or die trying. Victor tracks the monster ever northward into the Arctic regions. In a dog sled chase, Victor almost catches the ravenous fiend. However, the sea beneath them breaks away, making a fissure between the two. Victor, unable to do anything, blacks out. A little while later, Robert Walton, on a sea voyage, encounters Victor, and the narrative catches up to the time where Robert Walton finds Victor at the beginning of the story. Walton explains the remainder of the story in a series of letters to his sister. Walton describes finding Victor unconscious and feverish. His condition worsens and he dies shortly after. When Walton returns to shore several days later, he is shocked when he sees the monster weeping over Victor's corpse. The monster explains that after the death of his creator, he too can end his suffering, as there is no longer a chance of him finding a female counterpart. The monster then departs for the northernmost ice to die in agony. And that is the story of Victor Frankenstein.
Mommy! It's over!